A $200 billion war request, a 6-week government shutdown, and the National Guard patrolling the streets of D.C. Today on the floor, the cost of the administration's excursion in Iran is finally coming due.
200 billion? Paige, I remember when the initial request for the Iraq invasion in 2003 was about 60 billion less than that. And they're calling this an excursion?
That's the word the transcript shows the president is using. But if you look at the record from yesterday, the Senate is starting to use much heavier language.
I bet. We're talking about boots on the ground, a massive regional disruption, and a mounting body count, all while the domestic budget is essentially frozen.
Exactly. Let's start with what Democratic Senator Peter Welch of Vermont is calling the sleepwalking of the American government. It's floor notes from March 26, 2026. So just under a month ago, on February 28th, the U.S. launched what was described as a limited military strike against Iranian missile sites. Fast forward to yesterday, and the senator is painting a very different picture of the current situation.
Right. The military footprint has grown. We're now looking at 3,000 soldiers from the 82nd Airborne and 5,000 Marines being deployed. But what stands out in the record alongside the troop numbers is the economic chokehold Iran just put on the world.
You mean the Strait of Hormuz. Senator Welch pointed out that while the U.S. military destroyed 8,000 targets in the opening days, the Iranians have a vote in this conflict. They closed the strait, and according to the transcript, international shippers are answering no to risking their cargo.
And that no is a massive problem. Think of it like a clogged artery for the global economy. 20% of the world's oil goes through that gap. Senator Democratic Mark Warner of Virginia noted that traffic through the strait is down 95%. 95.
The Senate also took a moment yesterday to acknowledge that this goes beyond a policy debate or a line item. They passed a resolution honoring 6 service members killed in a drone strike on March 1st at Port Shuaibah in Kuwait. It's the first time the record has really paused to name the human cost of Operation Epic Fury.
It grounds the whole thing, doesn't it? When you read the names, Master Sergeant Nicole M. Amor, Captain Cody A. Cork, Sergeant First Class Noah L. Teachins, Sergeant Declan J. Cody, Major Jeffrey R. O'Brien, and Chief Warrant Officer Robert M. Marzan, it changes the energy from excursion to war.
The senator was blunt about the stakes, describing a passive drift into what could be another massive Middle East conflict. And he specifically called out the request for $200 billion in supplemental funding. He calculated that as a $1,400 tax on every single American household.
Which is wild when you consider that while this war request is sitting there, the Department of Homeland Security has been partially shuttered for 40 days because Congress can't agree on domestic spending.
That's the disconnect, isn't it? We're debating this massive down payment for Iran, but TSA agents are working without pay back home. Republican Senator John Thune of South Dakota noted that some DHS employees have been working without pay for more than 80 days total this fiscal year, if you count the previous shutdown.
80 days. Senator Republican John Barrasso of Wyoming even mentioned that some TSA workers are reportedly selling plasma just to cover their bills. And yet, the Senate is at a total standstill over a completely different issue: voting requirements.
The SAVE Act. This is where the domestic policy gears are grinding. Republicans want to require proof of citizenship, like a passport or birth certificate, to register to vote. They're trying to fold this into the must-pass spending bills.
And the rhetoric is getting, let's call it vintage. Democratic leader Chuck Schumer of New York actually used the word poppycock on the floor yesterday. He was reacting to claims that Democrats were moving the goalposts on ICE reforms.
That's a term you don't hear every day in the well of the Senate.
No, but it shows how high the temp is. The disagreement is basically this. Democrats say, pay the TSA and FEMA workers now, and let's negotiate the border stuff separately. Republicans say, no, we're not funding the agencies that enforce the law until we ensure the law, specifically the SAVE Act, is in place.
Democratic Representative Rashida Tlaib of Michigan had a really specific point about the SAVE Act yesterday in the House. She argued that requiring a birth certificate that matches your current legal name would hit married women the hardest. She said nearly 70 million married women don't have a birth certificate that matches their current name.
That's a huge number. It connects back to what we were saying about these dots. These administrative requirements can have massive ripple effects. Just like the helium situation.
Wait, did you just say helium?
I did. Senator Warner pointed it out. Helium is far more than a party supply. It's a critical input for making semiconductors and medical imaging. Qatar is the world's second-largest supplier. Since the Strait of Hormuz is closed, a third of the world's helium is effectively trapped. So while the House is debating voter IDs, the global tech supply chain is literally running out of gas.
It's a strange moment where the local and the global are crashing into each other. Which brings us to what happened in the House yesterday afternoon. They passed H.R. 5103.
The Make the District of Columbia Safe and Beautiful Act.
Exactly. Republican Representative John McGuire of Virginia led the charge on this. It establishes a federal commission to essentially take over key parts of D.C. governance. We're talking about deploying National Guard members for municipal law enforcement and prioritizing federal immigration enforcement right here in the Capitol.
The tension in that debate was palpable. Representative McGuire argued that D.C. leadership has pressured and at times directed police commanders to manipulate crime data. He basically said lawlessness in D.C. is a policy choice and Congress needs to step in using its constitutional authority over the district.
And the reaction from D.C.'s own representative, Democrat Eleanor Holmes Norton, was predictably sharp. She called it a demonization of the city's residents and pointed out that the bill's top priority, despite the name, is actually civil immigration enforcement and increasing the number of firearms in the city.
Right. The bill specifically directs the commission to speed up and lower the cost of concealed carry licenses in D.C. It's this incredible contrast. You have the National Guard patrolling the National Mall to keep it beautiful, while simultaneously pushing for more firearms on the street.
It's also about the physical space. Democratic Representative Jennifer McClellan of Virginia mentioned that the administration has already started demolishing the 123-year-old East Wing of the White House to build a new gilded ballroom. She called it a vanity project during a shutdown.
And all of this passed the House 218 to 206. It was almost entirely along party lines, with a few Democrats like Mary Peltola and Jared Golden crossing over to vote with Republicans.
But here's the detail that stopped me when I was looking at the text of that D.C. bill. Tucked away at the very end of the legislation is a sunset provision. The entire Safe and Beautiful program, the commission, the federal agents on the street, it all terminates on January 2nd, 2029.
January 2nd, 2029. Wait, that's exactly 18 days before the next presidential inauguration.
Exactly. They are essentially building a federal security and beautification apparatus that exists for the duration of this term, and then dissolves just as the next person is scheduled to take the oath of office.
So, the beautification only lasts as long as the current tenant. That is, efficient, if nothing else.
It certainly suggests a very specific vision for what the Capitol should look like for the next 3 years.
And who should be in it? Between the massive war request and federal agents on Pennsylvania Avenue, it feels like the conflict is unfolding on both sides of the ocean.
That's Floor Notes for today.
Stay informed out there, and maybe buy your helium balloons now. We'll see you next time.